To see people from all over DC, California, so coast to coast. Appreciate that. Great. I think we're about ready to get started. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy from Results Lab, and I'm here with my colleagues, Caitlin and Maggie, and I'm so glad you all could join us. At Results Lab, we work with organizations to build a culture of learning that embraces data. To us, data is not just numbers, it's voices and sentiments too. As a part of our Impact Accelerator and ACT model, Align, Capture, and Transform, we encourage organizations to elevate voices to drive decisions that best meet the needs of their communities. We found that this process works to also build trust with your grantee and nonprofit partners. Today, we're here to touch on our Community Insights service. Caitlin and Maggie will share 5 strategies to elevate grantee and community voice for funders. As questions come up, please put them in the chat. We'll be sending a recap with the recording and key takeaways at the end. And so we'll make sure to address any questions that you have. So Caitlin and Maggie, please take it away.
Hello, friends. Before diving into Community Voice, wanted to do a quick introduction to myself and allow Maggie to introduce herself as well. So why are we here? It is my greatest passion and the connective thread throughout my career of relying and leaning on my background in qualitative research to elevate voices of the community to help inform strategic decision making. This is really important as we consider the future of philanthropic giving, nonprofit partnership, in involving the communities in what we do instead of making decisions on their behalf. It's important for strategy, sustainability, relationship building, for so many reasons. And so I'm really excited to be here and having this conversation with you all today. Maggie, you want to say a quick hi?
Hey everybody, yeah, same with me as well. I have a background in community research and academic research, so I'm also a big believer in finding as many ways as we can to uplift community voice in research and in philanthropy and in the nonprofit world. So we're very excited to be sharing these different examples with you today.
Yeah, so first to ground us before we hop into some examples and then lead into some discussion about what community voice and elevating community voice can look like in the funding space. Wanting to ground ourselves in what community voice is and why we at Results Lab believe in prioritizing it. So community voice allows organizations to better understand needs of the community, priorities as they see them, values, and the vision for communities themselves as they see it. It's important for partnership because as we build futures together, it's a collective effort. And so community voice is an essential part in building in that that strategic design. And so something that we want to hit on today and elevate for you all is some places to elevate community voice that aren't just on the back end. I know it's becoming more and more popular in evaluation practices in particular, in program evaluation, to spotlight what people have gotten out of programs. What we're here to do today is to challenge you guys to find ways to elevate community voice earlier and earlier in the process. And so the goal in involving community voice and listening is to ensure that your solutions are actually responsive, that they're grounded in the problems as communities define them, that they're culturally affirming and will be accepted, and that they have a chance to be more equitable in their impact. And so a really great example of this is if there were to be a vacant lot open up in your neighborhood, how could community insights be used to inform its redevelopment? Unless you were to ask members of that community what they need, what they want, what might work, might actually serve the greater good in the community, you might hit the mark by assuming you know best. And chances are you guys as funders are deeply involved in your community and you do know really well what the community could use. And so community voice is a way to infuse some of those perspectives of your community, double check where you think you might be going, and build buy-in as well. So yeah, let's go ahead and move forward. Maggie's going to go through a little bit of a model explaining some different places we infuse community voice.
Thanks, Caitlin. So just like Caitlin was saying, there are so many different ways that we can really be pushing ourselves to think about how and when we're inviting community voice. So community insight and looking for opportunities to elevate community voice is really a vital piece of enacting the values of trust-based philanthropy, which you can see here on the left, right? So that's leading with trust, centering relationships, collaborating with humility and curiosity, redistributing power, and working for systemic equity. So when we're really thinking about how is this connected to trust-based philanthropy, it's very tied to the core values of that approach to philanthropy. So as you see here on the right, we really think of the way that you can think of how to engage your community as a journey with many points along the way. So what we'll be showing you all today is these are just 5 points. These are 5 examples we'll share, 5 different times that you can be encouraging more two-way conversations with your community or with grantees in a way that really uplifts their voices and really allows you to carry out each of these values of trust-based philanthropy. So we're going to jump into these 5, and then at the end, we'll have some space for discussion. But what we'll be doing is sharing 5 examples from work that we've done at Results Lab that really embody these values and show the many different ways you can get creative to elevate voice.
Thanks,
Great.
Maggie. All right, so for this first example, this is one of my absolute favorite ways and places to infuse community voice. I think it is very, very easy to hop directly into the solution space. Problems are mucky, they're yucky, and I think we as people like to start making sense and jump straight into figuring out the solutions. But the more that we can spend time with our communities of understanding and defining problems and figuring out their visions for what they need, the more likely our funding, our efforts are going to have an effect on the real life of the people that we're trying to serve. And so one fantastic place to inform or to infuse community voice, excuse me, is to invite the community into the solution design. Before you even start executing and getting feedback on how the solution went, ask them what they need. And there are many ways that you can do this. So you can ask community representatives. You can get some community members who are really super involved and do a focus group with them, like strategic advisors. You can do community polls, so more of a broad-based. So your efforts can go along a spectrum of storytelling efforts and asking people their perspectives in written form or story form, all the way to quantitative and surveys. But the point being here that you're focused on identifying what the problem is, aligning on the problem, and presenting ideas of what the best solution is. So a pro tip here is it can be light touch, such as a community poll that you do at an event that you're already having. This is one of my favorites, is Mentimeter. It's a great tool for doing really light touch data capture. Or it can be as in-depth as you guys need with, say, a focus group of community advisors. This content on this slide is from an example with a partnership between us and the National Conference of State Legislators, in which before we went in and even started thinking about how we were going to do programming and evaluate that programming, we had some strategic listening. First, we did some polls with their greater Health and Human Services members to figure out what are some of the biggest topics that they need help with. And then from there, narrowed down our focus for some more intentional conversations with the strategic advising group. And so we did some rapid fire questions and some in-depth conversation around some prompts, such as, how do you prefer to receive information on policy? How can we better help you process the information you receive? So better understanding what their needs are before we even started to design. Next step, Maggie. Thank you. So after strategic advising, if you're thinking about the continuum of a program or solution or policy, there's that design space of not just the big picture vision, but processes themselves. And this is another place that I really love to involve communities in the design of processes, because they're going to be walking through that process with your program facilitators. They're going to be going through experiences. And so an example we have here is elevating voice by involving them in creating a process, program, or engagement. In this particular instance, we worked with the Colorado Access Foundation, and they were elevating voices of grantees and potential grantees to better understand the process and what it is like to go through a grant application and reporting process. So rather than just designing and refining their grant application and reporting processes, assuming that they knew what people wanted and needed based on anecdotal feedback, they got really close. They got about 80% of the way. But the feedback we received from grantees really helped them refine their process to ensure that power dynamics between funders and grantees were as positive and grounded as possible, that grantees were making the best use of their time, that they were getting value out of the grant application and reporting process, and really shaking up what it means to be in a partnership. And so rather than just redesigning their grant application and reporting process through this focus group, they were able to really get some pointed feedback on places where their processes could be improved and get buy-in from the community, and build processes that would work for everyone. Yeah, taking their needs into account was a priority for sure. Right, Maggie, I think we can move on to the next example. This is my last example. So along that pathway of places you can involve community voice, another that I enjoy engaging with because it requires a lot of creativity and a little bit of playfulness is in the data collection. I think it can be easy to rely on real traditional data sources, focus groups, surveys. And that's not to say that those aren't great methods, but they're not always the most accessible to our community members. They require showing up at a certain time and giving a lot of your time. They have to find childcare, transportation, all sorts of things. And so it can be really nice to think of different ways to inform decision-making by involving communities. And so thinking of data as fun. So this is an example. We worked with a group of youth participatory action research partners. So all these positive youth development organizations were working on how do we collect data and inform our community decisions. And this is an example of a community that did a sticky note wall. And so adults could engage, kids could engage, you could do it while you're walking by. Data collection doesn't just have to be in a survey. There's lots of creative ways to do it. Bonus points awarded for efforts that involve communities in the design of data collection efforts. So for instance, this organization that I'm spotlighting in this picture, they initially were going to ask the questions in English, and then they asked for feedback from the community. And one of the parents was like, yeah, but we have a strong Spanish speaking population. Let's include the prompts in English and Spanish. And so this is an example of a community helping to inform data collection in a way that's fun, engaging, and grounded and relatable to the community themselves. So not just involving the community in the data capture and being part of the data set, but also in the data design. Right. Maggie, over to you, I believe.
Yes. Okay. So now we're thinking, right? So you've done some data collection. That doesn't have to be the last time that you talk to people in the community around the questions you have or make sense of the data, right? So the next opportunity is what we call validation of the data or your findings or your insights. And this would be a really crucial point to share back out, hey, here's what we're hearing. This is what we're learning, sharing that back out with the community before you move into finalizing that data or taking action. And this can be really helpful to add additional context, to learn more about the process, to learn maybe what you need to ask next time. So just like Caitlin was sharing, those bonus points, right, for including the community in the build of your data collection, this could also be a great point to be able to ask, here's what we captured, what do you think? And the feedback you can get can be very helpful to not just understand the findings more, but learn more about how you capture that data. And maybe there's some learnings for you for next time, right? Of maybe we should have offered it in Spanish as well. Maybe there's some other ways we could have done this so that we could have gotten more voices. And so this can just be a really helpful piece to make sure that the community is still involved before you get to that stage of action. So the example that we have here is we have a space of K through 12 educators. It's called Community Insights Network, and they have a interactive Slack space as part of this group. So what we did here was after we've done the study collection and have some of our initial findings, we shared this back with them in this interactive space in Slack. And so this allowed us to share, say, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do you see? Do you see yourself in this data? Do you have any feedback? What are we not thinking of? And being able to use that before we finalize our findings to really make sure that there's even more voices included than originally in that data capture. And so the goal here is to really make sure we truly hear the community before moving on in the work. And just going back to those values of trust-based philanthropy, this can be really helpful for strengthening trust and for addressing power dynamics through amplifying community voice. It really shows the community we're not just asking you when we're doing data collection, we're also keeping you apprised of how we're thinking about what we heard from you. And that can be really powerful. So the next and final example here, again, this will also be used from the same community, but this is the very important sharing it back, right? So instead of just collecting that data, sharing that data back with the community, and especially sharing it in a space where there can be dialogue. So this is really important for building trust and accountability, and it can take many different shapes. So just like we have with the last Community Insights Network, we share these findings in a digital space. But ideally, this can be done in a town hall setting or a meeting or in person. A space where you really allow for there to not just be, here's an email of the report, right? But here's actually a space where we can share with you what we've heard and what we're going to do about it. And so this is really helpful for keeping people in the loop. This can build enthusiasm for what comes next and really shows them that you're really listening and you're really taking what they've shared with you seriously in the moving forward. So just like before, bonus points here, if you can share it in a space that really encourages community reflection, such as a town hall or an in-person meeting, that this can be a great way to keep the community as a part of your work and keep that conversation going. Great. So those, like we said, are just 5 examples that meet the need to increase community voice in a way that also aligns with trust-based philanthropy. So now we can turn it to you all with the time we have left. So here's just 2 questions just to get you all thinking, but this can be an open discussion. So what ideas for elevating community voice have been sparked for you? Do you see opportunities for your organization to be starting to take on some of these projects? Or do you see that there's a growing interest in the community in some of these different data collection methods or methods of elevating community voice?
And feel free to engage by coming off camera, off mute, or also in chat. Understand that we're all in different places, so engage in the way that feels best to you.
I'll share. Hi, my name is Chris. I'm with Gates Family Foundation in Colorado. And I would say we're early on in our community insights listening journey. We have tended in the past to work with coalitions of other funders. And generally speaking, I think it's a little bit more emergent. So I don't think our listening is always tied to kind of like program strategy and a broader learning agenda. But I think something that's really valuable is hopefully by working with other funders, we're not tapping the same audiences multiple times. But it's a pretty imperfect science, and we're still working on that. We don't always reliably collaborate with our funding partners before we do community listening episodes.
Thanks for that, Chris. Appreciate the emergent, like that community listening is happening and there's so many ways to do it. And it's always a growth journey of where can you lean in and do more. It's always an evolution. Appreciate sharing and the vision for aligning it in the future with program and strategy and measurement. See a comment in from Mark, the nudge, to share back. Closing the loop. I've had a good mentor say, if you didn't close the loop, it didn't happen. Closing the loop is important, especially when you're trying to build ongoing relationships with communities. Because if you don't share back how you use that data and how it's informing your thinking, it's really hard for them to not feel left hanging. Like, whatever happened to that? And it can be really detrimental to trust. And so the inverse is, by sharing out, you're showing people we are listening, your voice is important, you are important, your perspectives are important, and we're doing something with what we heard. And that can be monumentally useful in building traction and buy-in in a community. It's just showing them that you're listening. Anybody have ideas from these examples of maybe some ways they want to stretch? Maybe think about some places they want to grow, deepen, include community voice in a space they haven't previously?
Hi, this is Luciana Dar, California Department of Social Services. I'm fairly new to this space, but I guess my question is, and it could be lead to an idea, has to do, we're elevating voices, listening to the community, but we know that within communities, there are those that are more outspoken and kind of, are the leading voices. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are responsive to the whole community. And so my question is, when you are working with organizations on this, how do you handle that, right? Because the fact that the voices that might be elevated are not necessarily representing the community in some way.
Definitely. Thank you, Luciana. A common challenge, and appreciate you elevating that. I think that there are a number of ways that you can handle it, but yes, want to acknowledge that just because someone's voice is the loudest doesn't mean that it is the most representative of people you're trying to serve. And so I think listening to community voice has to be a very careful walk of understanding whose voice you're elevating and how it fits into the bigger picture of who your demographics are. So something that I suggest when working with clients, and would love Maggie too, if you have additional ideas, something that I suggest is thinking about a number of data collection opportunities, that there isn't just one opportunity and that there are multiple ways to engage. So for instance, with this example of the National Conference of State Legislators, Maggie, if you want to go back to the first example I shared. This is an example of us having multiple data collection points. So first we started with the whole group in a really light touch way. And this was intended to be something that a lot of different people would be interested in engaging with. So whether it's your introvert, your extrovert, your tech aficionados versus those needing a little bit more help, this was supposed to be an easy way to engage. And thinking about the different audiences that you have and who might be willing to participate in different things, and diversifying your data set is a really great way to think about, well, whose voice are we hearing the loudest, and are they really representative of the people we're trying to serve? And so with this focus group of advisors, when you're doing a deeper dive, making sure that that focus group is representative of the people you're trying to hear from. I think a town hall kind of format is great, but you're going to get those really eager to engage folks. Something that we work on with clients is not just having the rah go-getters of your community for your focus groups, but maybe some of those naysayers, some of those people who are dissatisfied, invite them into the process, and making sure that your group is representative of a number of different perspectives. That way you're engaging in dialogue. And having a number of ways for people to participate. Not everybody wants to do an in-depth focus group. Some people want a light touch. And so diversifying the ways that people can engage can also pull in some perspectives that you might not hear otherwise. Maggie, do you have any other ideas you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, probably similar. I think there's two things. You could use the data that you have to help you inform maybe what are some other opportunities you can start to offer in the future, right? So if you're seeing that, oh, we do a town hall style, but we're tending to hear the same voices, maybe that's a space to try something new and to add an additional. Doesn't mean you have to not have it, right? But just like Caitlin was expressing, are there some additional ways you could capture community voices? And the other piece is to be thinking about how you're inviting people to those spaces. There can be some space there for seeing if there's certain groups you want to either elevate or to really focus on, right? Of like, we want to really hear from people who have had this experience or come from this community. We're going to hold a space specifically for these folks because we really want to hear from them, and we haven't in these other spaces. So there are a lot of ways that you can really get creative and think about how else you can really start to even out who you're hearing from and using the data you've collected in the past to help you get there.
And Luciana, one more idea. Maggie, you sparked this. Incentives. We at Results Lab believe it's important to find ways to offer mutual value back to the people we're engaging with for our strategic planning. They're offering their time, their expertise, and where possible, we work really hard with our funder partners, our nonprofit partners, to provide incentives for that time. And so when you're trying to pull in different voices, if you're trying to do an oversampling of a certain group, often providing an incentive is enough to say, hey, I see you, I respect you, I want you part of this conversation. We're here to listen and do good work together.
Thank you.
Absolutely, appreciate the questions. I'm wondering if there are other things that are emerging for this group. If you were to do some advocating in your organization for where you want to do some community voice, where seems possible? Where do you think you might have the most buy-in, or where might be a good jumping off point? Bye, Anna. Thank you for coming.
I think one thing that we're really aware of here at Gates and that we're really working towards is accessibility of our grant programs and our impact investments. I'm trying to figure out how we can really intentionally, proactively engage with it's a place-based foundation. We only work within the state of Colorado, how we can make ourselves more accessible to more people. And I think that just accessibility in terms of folks being able to approach us and request, partnership and start to co-create funding opportunities is one important thing. We don't know what we don't know about how we're perceived in the community and how we can become more accessible. And I think along those lines too, I think there are statewide and then regional organizations that I'm sure folks are familiar with in their own corresponding regions, but that work on how we can make the grant application and then also grant reporting process more streamlined, easier, more culturally appropriate, right size to grant sizes. So I think that would be a really interesting thing for us to be able to learn as a foundation and then share out directly. So again, Caitlin, I love that you brought up, it's always important to close the loop. And I think too, I would pair that with, it's super important for us to propagate learning across philanthropy because we have a bad habit of keeping learnings close to the vest and not sharing them with others. And then we end up duplicating efforts.
So hi everyone. I have a suggestion. To that point, if you have a grant application and you specifically say the voice of the client or the voice of the consumer ought to be included or highlighted. I mean, mostly I find myself working as a program evaluator, but I think if the funder specifies they want to hear the voice of the grantee, then it's more likely to be captured in like a application or a proposal. You say, oh, we have to have testimonials from clients. Yeah, when you propagate the grant application or when you send it out there, how do you make sure the people that respond, the programs that respond, include the voice of the consumer? Somehow specify it. Yeah, I don't know. The funders specifically asked for that. I can't recall seeing a lot of that where it says you must include the voice of the client.
I'll open that to the group and see if anybody has some experience, and then I want to share some thoughts that I have as well. Has anyone seen that in the philanthropic funding space of specifying in particular that in your reporting, in your process evaluation, in your application, that you're highlighting the voices of the community. Does anybody have examples of that? Maybe then I'm hearing a space that we might all challenge one another to lean in here. Paul, I will elevate that something that Jacqueline, Results Lab colleague, put into chat is we do capacity building with nonprofits around community voice, community insights, capacity building in a number of different ways. But one way that we have helped our funder partners think about community voice in a different way is by facilitating and sponsoring participation in a cohort. So this cohort might be specifically focused on methods to elevate community voice to inform your own decision making. I think something that's important, yes, you can add it into an application, you can add it into your reporting requirements that you want to see community voice. I think that there is some support that's needed in order to actually get it to come through. And I think that your nonprofit partners applying for these grants can greatly benefit from capacity building on what community voice is, where they can infuse it, how they can benefit, how the sustainability of their programs improves through it. And so I think the challenge is maybe included in your reporting processes, but also including support structures to say, we believe in this, so we're going to offer you guys coaching and capacity building supports in addition to just requiring it. I see a chat from Kenzie, a colleague here who has an example. More of a focus on asking to demonstrate evidence of the needs instead of evidence on the back end of what was achieved through the grant. So shifting the reporting process to say, okay, you're doing this work. It's great work. Show us why you're doing this work. Where are the needs and what homework have you guys done to demonstrate why you're doing what you're doing? That's cool.
We just have a few minutes left. So just want to take a moment to thank Caitlin and Maggie so much for joining us. This was really, really insightful. Just wanted to quickly introduce our colleague, Jacqueline Zablosky, to talk a little bit about our results action model, and then we will wrap up.
Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if you can see me, but it's great to see you all. Really excited about this session in general. Results Lab, we work with nonprofits and funders in a variety of ways, but really just to build that culture of learning so that you're using data to drive informed decisions. How we've worked with funders, we have an impact accelerator that really walks you through our align, capture, transform. It helps you get a really strong impact strategy to know if investments are having intended impact. Community insights and elevating voice is a part of that. We use that to not only inform impact strategies, as well as validating them back with your communities. And then really, like Caitlin had mentioned, we do a lot of capacity building with nonprofits. So great opportunity to do some real great cohort work where both the funder and the nonprofit are benefiting from data use. So would love to connect and learn more. We will share a recap with some key takeaways after this session. We love to do virtual coffees. I actually see a lot of you in Cincinnati too. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. Happy to do coffees in person. But really excited to continue the conversation and encourage you all to connect amongst each other and really learn from each other in this space. So yeah, Amy, any other things you want to add there?
I don't think so. Just wanted to thank everyone again for being here and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.